Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Standout Job Seeker podcast presented by JobScan. I'm your host, Sydney Myers, and in this episode, I interviewed Becky Ferrone. This conversation was so great. Becky is a career coach. She specifically works with women in their 40s who are deciding to stay or leave a distressing work situation. So the conversation is kind of about making a career change, but honestly, it's just about being in that situation and trying to decide what to do next, who to listen to, how to determine what your options are and what the best option is. It was a great conversation. I encourage you to listen to all of it. Becky is actually going to be a speaker at our upcoming HireReady virtual workshop series. She's going to do a workshop there on networking and walk you through this process that she has for creating connections and conversations. That event is going to be taking place on September 5th. It's a one-day free event. We've already had 12,000 people register. So it's a big deal for us. It's actually the first time that we're doing it. We had our Standout Summit in February, and so we're launching a second event this year that will be annual. So you can register for free. Just go to jobscan.co/HireReady. That's one word, HireReady, and you can register there for free. We're going to have sessions from experts, and it's going to be different because these will be workshop sessions. So it won't be just you listening to a talk. It'll be a working session. You'll be able to come away from each session with a resume that's improved, or see an actual LinkedIn profile audit in progress, or actually talk to a recruiter about how to handle common interview questions and submit your sample answers. So there'll be really interactive workshop sessions. I encourage you to register and join the 12,000 other people who have joined. It's a free event. Again, jobscan.co/HireReady, and Becky will be speaking there. I think after listening to this conversation, you will be signing up immediately because she has so much knowledge and experience and expertise. So enjoy this episode where we talk about being in a situation that you just want to get out of and how to determine what to do next. If you enjoy the episode, give us a rating or follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you're listening. All right, let's get to this interview. Well, Becky, thank you so much for joining the show. We're going to talk about women over 40 making a career change, or I guess a lot of this might apply to just anyone making a career change. But before we start with that, I wanted to ask, what made you want to focus specifically on women making a career change? What are some of the unique things that people in that situation deal with that you help with?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. For many people, not just women, right? Turning 40 is a real milestone moment. Maybe some of us feel like we're finally adults then, or maybe you start seeing your life getting shorter. But it's also the time for a lot of women, like if you have children, typically maybe your kids are old enough that they don't need you as much. It's also a point in time when you've probably been in the workplace for, I don't know, at least 15 years if that's your path. And you might really be getting tired of what you're doing, or might have realized that, boy, I made a decision back in my younger years and it just doesn't fit who I am anymore. And then the other kind of last part is um, more one of those, it when you see it, is women just have a lot more self authority around age 40. And what I mean by that is maybe we're questioning the shoulds that we either are aware of or not aware of that society's kind of pushing us to do. There's a lot of expectations on women.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so the shoulds, I love that point. This is something I used to have a friend who was an older woman. I think I was like 19 or something, and she was in her 60s. And I say should a lot, like I should do this or I shouldn't do that. And she would always challenge that, like, what is should? You're not allowed to say should anymore. But and I guess a lot of women do that. It's like, I should do this, or this is what I should, like a decision I should make. And yeah, I felt that.
yeah. I've also heard this saying, Sydney, of don't should on yourself.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So then, with all of this, like, of you kinda it's like a milestone age, you've been working for a long time, you're a different person that you were than you were when you were younger and you might have made your career decisions. Like, what is the point that a lot of women get to in their career? A lot of women that are listening to this, what point are they at with their career and their mindset and how they feel about it?
It will be different for different people, but I will tell you definitely with the woman I talk to in my coaching practice. Some people describe it as being like, I'm just done. Like, why do I need to go to 6 meetings a day? I'm just, done with the cadence or the corporate falseness or lack of authenticity. That's an angle I hear. I hear people saying they're just bored with what they're doing. That could also be related to going to all those meetings. But they another way of saying that is they really mastered what they set out to do and don't know what else to do from here. So a lot of times people just stay where they are from inertia. And a lot of times people like know they can do more. I know somebody who's just very frustrated because she has a certain job title and job experience that is limiting her desire to actually play bigger and do bigger things and play a bigger role in the organization. And in some, career paths, those things matter more than the person in front of them. So it's
Mhm.
people get frustrated.
Okay, interesting. So then if they're in that situation, do a lot of them feel like a career change is the solution? Like, how do they arrive at that, like, to that point or that decision?
They don't actually. It's not. I don't
Oh,
think it's the first. So, and I'll explain what I mean. A lot of times, people are feeling the things I was describing, like I'm frustrated, I'm bored, I'm done, and the first thing that they tend to think about is, I have to get out of here. I hear that over and over again. I just got to get out of here. And the reason that I describe my work as helping people to decide to stay or go is because there's more choices than just I have to leave. So if you take a pause and figure out, what isn't working where I am now, that's the first step. You may end up leaving, you may not. You may find other things that you can do to redesign the work where you are right there.
yeah, okay, interesting. Yeah, I noticed so one of the things you talk about on, your website around your programs is that one of the first steps is coming to terms with your situation. Like, what all does that mean? I feel like that's a really loaded statement of coming to terms with your situation. What does that mean for women in that
Yeah.
situation?
Um, I'll describe that. The first thing I do with my coaching clients is something I call the North Star Values Assessment. And it's an exercise we go through to figure out what are your top values now. And I think a lot of us generally know what's important to us. We haven't always articulated them. So, for example, if someone's in a job, they're over 40, they've been doing it a long time, they feel like they're pretty good at it, and they have a manager who's micromanaging them. And it just makes them furious and angry, and they wake up at 3 in the morning. Well, working with articulating your values might figure out, oh, autonomy or growth or more life balance is so much more important to me right now, and I'm not getting it. So I've had so many people say to me with a sense of relief, Sydney, that, oh, this is why I'm so frustrated. This is why I'm so stressed. So
Okay.
that's what that describes.
Okay. So is it kind of like so like I worked with a leadership coach a couple of years ago and I was struggling with situations that like distressing is a word that I would use and just like another phrase I use is emotionally painful. Like it was an emotionally painful situation. But one thing she reiterated over and over was that it wasn't just where I was, it wasn't like it was the people I was working with or the company. She would say, "This is leadership. Like, this is what it's like to be in a leadership position. You are probably gonna deal with somebody like this or something like this in whatever company as long as you want to have a leadership position." Is it sometimes that of, like, facing those realities about the situation?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting you bring that up because another thing I tell all my clients is radical acceptance, which is another word for what that leadership coach told you.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean you have to stay there, but if you radically accept that this is the situation I'm in, there's going to be difficult people. And then you say, okay, well, what do I need to feel better about this situation? Maybe you need to have that person transfer somewhere else or what, but
Yeah.
more, what can you control and how does that relate to what's important to you? And in other words, your values. So
Okay.
what if you needed more life balance in the middle of that situation, Sydney, and you went to your boss and said, "Can I work at home, you know,
Mhm.
longer, more frequently than I'm doing now?" That gives you control to calm yourself down.
Okay, yeah. So okay, so then it's getting to the question of what can I do about it? And that might be a career change. It might be a job change, but it might be just an action you can take in your current situation.
Exactly.
Which I think is that's the hardest one. Like that was kind of where I got to. I was like, okay, if this is my role, this is what it's going to be like no matter where I go, then I have to actually step up and stand up for myself and stand up for what I need or just what I believe is right and have really difficult conversations. Um, that was much harder than just like, I quit, I can't do this anymore,
Yeah.
which sometimes might be it. But I guess that leads to a question then, like, how would a woman in this situation know if this is a me thing that I can take control of something, or if like I need to just get out of this
Yeah.
situation?
That is a really good question. It's you have to experiment is the bottom line answer.
Mm.
So, because you just don't know. It's a mystery in the sense that what small experiments can you take in that situation to figure out the answer? So if you've done everything like, oh, here's my values, here's what I need, and you've tried to get it, you've spoken up for what you need. And, if your workplace is completely non responsive to that, that could lead to deciding to leave.
Yeah.
So it
Okay.
depends on, and it's also your own tolerance. There's no, you know what, Sydney, I'd like to let people know there's no right or wrong answer.
Okay.
People are different. Some people decide to stay in a place for a very long time, and it's most important to them to have financial security. So there's coming back to the values. So
Mhm.
that will be their driving force, right? Maybe you're putting kids through college or something like that. Someone else might say, it's most important to me that I keep growing and evolving myself and learning, and there's nowhere for me to go in this
Mhm.
organization. I'm tapped out. So that could be a more clear answer. But I wanted to add one more thing, which is when you talk about it with someone like a coach, family and friends are great too, but you are going to get their biased opinions.
Mhm.
As you talk about it out loud, you're actually making sense of that situation for yourself too.
Yeah,
So
that's
most of
true.
the time you kind of come to your own conclusions, but it helps to know your values and some other things that are really important to you right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one thing, so I did eventually, quit the job, but before I did that, there were it was kind of like experiments, like things I needed to do to try to take control of the situation and like whatever I needed to do to make it line up with my values. And then after I tried those things and I was talking to my coach again, she was like, "Okay, so I wanted you to try this for at least 90 days, but it sounds like that's not something that's going to align with what you feel like you need." And so it's kind of like that. It's like trying things, but then realizing like maybe this situation just is not one that really plays to my
Yeah.
strengths or just the kind of person that I want to be. And then another thing that like and I'm talking about myself a lot here, but just like being able to relate to the situation. So another thing was I one of my like personal values was that I wanted to demonstrate resilience. I was like, I can get through anything and I can deal with any situation. I'm going to stick it out. But then I realized like I don't need to prove that to myself here. I've proven it to myself elsewhere. So I can just get out of a bad situation and go on to something that's better. So I think that's kind of what you're saying is like there's a lot of variables and it's going to
There
be different.
Yeah. You bring up another interesting point, Sydney. This is such an interesting conversation. I do think there's something inherent to women feeling like they can fix things or they have to be where they are. There's some kind of weird combination there. So I
Yeah.
definitely have clients that are afraid to leave because they're like, well, I have to learn this lesson. And won't I
Yes.
just, take, I'm still going to be me, like wherever you go, there you are, is from the meditation world. But I would like to say to those people, you're learning it right now. It's not going to be the same in your next place. That's just how life is. You'll be in a different situation with different people. You can go if you feel like you've learned a lesson. You don't have to fix where you are.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. Like, or you can learn it like somewhere else in a place that's more conducive to, or like you might be in a situation where it's like that thing is not going to be fixed. It's not about you
Yeah.
developing some new skill or something. It's like that it's never going to be fixed. Yeah. Or maybe it's just like, we have our lifetime of 70 or 80 years, and I don't feel like this is something that I want to develop as a person in my lifetime. It just doesn't matter that much to me. Or, going through this situation, it's just not a priority for me to have said that I did that. It kind of just person to person.
There's kind of a funny phrase that might encapsulate this. Not my circus, not my monkeys.
Yeah. 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 Okay, so then let's say they get to the point where a career change has come up. First of all, like, am I jumping ahead? Like, is there still more to the process of deciding if a career change is the right thing to do?
Can I tell you a little story to
Yes.
highlight
Sure.
that? Okay. Now we'll talk about me. Um,
Okay.
and a big reason why I do this. So in the same month when I turned 30, I left a big job at Microsoft. I was on the original Microsoft Outlook team. Broke up with a boyfriend and I moved. It was a lot. And I had this vague idea. I'd gotten burnt out. I had this idea, oh, I'm going to go to grad school next. I didn't really know why or where or what I wanted to do with having gone to grad school. And Sydney, it took me 5 years, and as I like to call it, $80,000. I finally applied to a bunch of different ones, and I finally went to Carnegie Mellon University, which is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is not close at all to Seattle, Washington, where I was at the school. So I finally went, and I'm happy to have a degree from a great school, but I will tell you honestly, it did not solve my intrinsic need to know what I really wanted to do next. So that's a big reason why I do this. And if I'd only had a career coach with this approach that I like to offer people, it is based on design thinking. If you happen to know what that is, you don't have to know at all. But the steps are, and I add a couple in. So we've been talking about values. So I want to help people feel confident and clear about themselves first. So, what are your values? We also talk about who are your inner critics, how can they help you, and how can you talk back to them? Because our inner critics are anything from like, oh my god, my pants don't fit, to I could never do that career, I'm not qualified, whatever it is. We get some of those things cleared out first,
Yes.
and then we start collecting information, like what do you actually really like to do, what really lights you up or puts you in a flow state. I have people write this stuff down. I don't care where you write it. You can write it on dozens of pink stinkies, as far as I'm concerned. But you're collecting information, and then you're broadening your list of what is possible for what you want to do. And then you start brainstorming and looking for new combinations of what you might end up doing. And then you decide you're going to pick 3 possible paths. Again, if I had just done this when I was thinking about grad school could have been one of those paths.
Mhm.
And you figure out how well do these 3 paths align, or journeys or odysseys align with me as I am now. You can think of another word for that as congruence. And then you say, okay, what do I need to know about these possible paths? And you look at it through a lens of about 5 years, because it's not just about your work, Sydney, it's about your life.
Yeah.
So, and then you say, what do I need to know to choose this one? So if I had said, okay, one of my paths is staying with what I do, what I've been doing at Microsoft. One of my paths is going to grad school. And I always encourage people to pick that third one to be some secret dream that you never want to tell anybody, but you keep being drawn to. Like for me, maybe it was like opening a clothing store. What if I had really looked down and said, which of these fit who I am the most right now? And then
Mm.
I help people decide. The decision process itself can be kind of scary. You might want to try it on. And then for people that are like, well, I want to go from being a project manager in tech to being a project manager in nonprofit. I just made that up. Well, then what's the implementation aspect to help people with that too, right? The nuts and bolts of what does your resume have to look like? Your LinkedIn. How do you prepare for interviews? How do you negotiate? So that's a rough guideline of all the steps.
Okay. Okay. So I was definitely jumping ahead.
Yes.
So there is, okay. So, and I think this is on your coaching site, you have a breakdown of the career change framework. So just to like reiterate it, the first step is deciding who you are, what your values are, deciding who to listen to,
Yes.
and then meditate on that. So define ideas, what would
Yeah.
feel right to you right now. And then third step is ideate or brainstorm. So come up with those three path options. And then you go into researching and talking to people and seeing what you would need in order to do one of
Yes.
those paths.
Yep. That's the test. And I wanted to point out something too, and give you an example. Meditate is a great way to think about it, but it's meditating on information you know about yourself. So, for example, I noticed in one of my jobs recently, I really liked trying to figure out some of the technical aspects of a system we're using. So that goes in my collection of things I know I like to do. And then here's a great example of someone going through this path. This is not one of my clients. It's an example of a gentleman who was working for a travel company, had been offered a promotion, and wasn't that jazzed about being there anymore because he wanted other things in his life. So when he went through this process, he said, "Okay, I want to be in the sun. I want to be doing more surfing, maybe helping kids do something. I need more outdoor things in my life, but I
Mhm.
also need to support myself." So the solution ended up being for him. His company actually was able to transfer him to Hawaii.
Oh, cool.
So he kept his job, opened a surf school for kids. Like, would those things have occurred to you in the middle of your most miserable 3 in the morning moments?
I don't
Probably
think
not.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just one example of kind of what's possible going through a
Yeah.
situation.
What would you say, so of those steps, those 4 or 5 steps, which one do you notice people have the hardest time with?
Oh, that's a good one. They want to skip, like we were just talking about just a minute ago. They want to skip from, okay, I know independence is important to me too. Like, oh, I got to send out a resume now. They want to go to, everybody goes here. They want to go to LinkedIn, start looking through things. They want more of an immediate fix to how they feel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not always perfectly linear when I go through this with my clients. I'll be very honest with you.
Yeah. I think I was it was another career coach I was talking to. I think she said people just want to stop the pain. They just want to make the pain go
Right.
away. And it seems like the fastest thing is just to get into another job. And
Yep.
that might be it, but going through the process, even if you only spent a day on it and you get to the same solution,
Yeah.
but just going through that just to make sure is better. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do sometimes have clients who, okay, I'm going to switch. I'm going to get a new job right now, but they still continue working with me because they want to ensure that, okay, now that I know who I am and what I want, that I keep maintaining that focus through the lens of, working in this job. And
Mhm.
how do they want to show up? So what if I've got someone who was recently promoted to a new manager and she is completely dedicated to making sure that her values inform how she shows up for this new team. And so she doesn't go backwards into feeling like crap.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I wanna spend a couple minutes talking about the decide who to listen to thing. This is something that I think would be hard of, like, going back to the "I should do this or that" of ignoring that. Um, that's really hard, and even now that I'm older, I recognize it, and I actively tell myself to not make decisions that way, but it's very hard. I even, like, as I get older, I get more tired of my inner voice, which is really
Yeah.
the inner critic. I'm like, sometimes it'll be going off and I'm just like, "Will you shut up? Like, you have
Yeah.
never been helpful to me." Okay. Like, is that a hard part? How do you decide
Yeah.
to not listen to that inner critic?
Oh god, what a great question. Yeah. Yeah, I know this stuff and I still on a regular basis have to manage mine as well. So, I'll start off with this. I am trained at something called positive intelligence. There's a book by the same name, and the word for your inner critic that they use is your saboteurs, and it's a way of actually you can take a short quiz and figure out, what are the different types of saboteurs or inner critics, and they're kind of archetypes, right? The hypervigilant, the controller, the pleaser. I'm not listing all of them, but the avoider, and we all have the judge. So this is something I go through with people, and it'll actually give you this assessment. Will give you a score on what's the strength of their control over your mind, and the idea is to take specific actions to weaken their impact on you. So that's a really academic way of talking about them. But I also wanted to say that these voices we all have them. They typically come from when we're younger and they had a really big purpose then, which was to protect us. And we don't always need that protection anymore. So, one of the ways that is really helpful to when they come up is to actually say, "All right, I see you." You can even name them. I call one of mine one of mine's a real bitch, and I call her Betty, which sometimes people call people who are named Becky Betty, and I hate it. So she's Betty, right? She's a boss. She's bitchy. And I'll be like, "All right, I see you, Betty. What do you need me to know right now?" So instead of trying to push that entity, that voice totally away, let them say something. This all sounds very strange now that I'm saying it out loud. It works, right? And then say, "All right, I've got this from here. Thank you." Because you're an adult now, Sydney. I'm an adult. You don't really need the same level of protection anymore. So that's one of the ways you can manage them.
Yeah. I love that. So that's kind of in line with one thing that my leadership coach brought up was related to fear, which is sort of the same thing. It's like this voice
Yeah.
that's like like stop, don't do this. This is bad. But and I was like I want to be able to lead fearlessly. And she was like you don't need to be fearless because there's nothing wrong with fear. It's something that's trying to protect you, that's
Yeah.
telling you, "Hey, this situation could be really bad for you." And all you have to do is think like, "Okay, why could it be bad?" And then like acknowledge that and then think, "Okay, like so what do I need to do to prepare for it or am I equipped to handle it?" And then once I think through that, I'll think like, "Okay, thank you for warning me about this, but I can handle it. I
Yeah.
am equipped for this. I know what to do."
Yeah. Yep. I like your leadership coach already.
Yeah,
Um,
she was I highly recommend everyone, not just a leadership coach, but
yeah.
any sort of career coach. It helped me so much. Yeah.
That's great. I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah. And another way of saying that too is I've heard the phrase executive function or your executive brain to kind of take controls a hard word, but to manage the situation for you while acknowledging that other voice of fear. And it's pretty common that when you're about to do something new, that voice jumps up and down
Yeah.
and wants some attention.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, it's okay to acknowledge it because and, like, maybe there is something valid that you need to do, like, an action you need to take to make sure that it doesn't turn out as bad as your inner voice thinks it will be. So
Yeah.
it can be helpful, but just don't let it, like, control you and make you like, stop you from doing things.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, so then, back on so, like, staying focused on the career change thing, I guess like talking about coaches, the question I had was where does a coach help the most with this? I think probably throughout the entire process. Maybe a better way to put it is like why what are the things that you could miss if you didn't have like a trained coach working with you on this career change thing?
Yeah. That's a great question. There's 4 or 5 things here. An unbiased sounding board. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. So if I'm talking to my husband and I say I want to quit my job and become a coach, he cannot help maybe but react a little bit, even though he's very supportive of this. There's a little bit of him that's like, is that really safe? Because those are his values,
Yeah.
right? So that's going to happen in family and friends. It's hard to get someone who doesn't, have any stake in what you're doing to give you a sounding board. And I'm not here to tell you what to do. If sometimes people do ask my specific opinion on something, and if I maybe I'll give it, but I'm there to ask the person, what do they think? What do they want? And not everybody has somebody to actually just listen to them. Particularly, a lot of women are in that caretaker role, so they're always trying to make everyone else feel okay.
Mm.
Another aspect is accountability. So you might have 12, career change books or what have you next to your bed. Are you going to read them? Some people aren't readers. You
Yeah.
want to make a change, but it's hard. So if you have a partner in accountability, that really helps. And then another thing is being a cheerleader for you. So I point out to people that they already are resilient. Your coach has
Yeah.
probably said that to you.
Yeah.
You're already strong. You've already been through all these things. You've already taken care of yourself for your whole life. Why can't you keep taking care of yourself? So that has been some of the biggest things that my clients have told me, is having someone really believe in them, hold them accountable, and help them see other new perspectives. There's some really cool, trained coach tricks on
Mhm.
helping people see some new perspectives. So
Yeah, so all of that, like, yes, coaches are like special people. It's like a special kind of person that like those things that you just talked about are so important and so helpful. Okay, so I want to spend the last few minutes getting a little bit into the job search part of this just because I want to make sure that I get your expertise on these topics. So let's say the person is in the career change mode, going through the job search. How do they approach things like their resume or LinkedIn profile? They might have that fear of like all of my experience is not entirely relevant. What do they have to do differently than other job seekers on their resume or LinkedIn?
yeah, I think there's a couple questions embedded in that one. I'll start. It's the internal part that to me is the most important. First of all, it's really hard for all of us to talk about our achievements and to write them down on two pieces of paper. So let me just get that out of the way. There's nothing wrong with you if you're like, I can't remember what I did and why should anyone care?
Yeah.
Yeah, just go have some chocolate and try it again later. But um, the it can be really helpful to have someone articulating what you're really great at. So I feel like this question, Sydney, sorry, is about what to say and then how to depict it or illustrate it. Do I have that right?
Yeah, kinda like how to frame it. I guess people are
Yeah,
afraid that it's gonna be harder for them or like a negative that they're making a career change. So
gotcha. Okay.
how do
Okay.
they frame that?
Okay. So here's a specific thing that I do with a lot of my clients that helps get at that. It's called the reflected best self exercise. And it involves going to ask, I don't know, 5 to 8 of your closest. Now we're going back to your friends and family, and asking them, what do you like when you're really showing up at your strongest in your work or in your personal life? And then you collect those and categorize them, and that becomes your transferable skills in a lot of ways. So you can show leadership at work or in a volunteer situation. There's lots of things, but if you're getting like actual almost testimonials from people, then you can start weaving those in. So if you want to become change from project manager to a product manager, for example, there's a lot of overlap there. But if you know what that new role entails, you can look for things in your past experience that have to do with some of the core skills there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so, like, um so maybe the job title, like, doesn't match exactly, but those
Yeah.
bullet points that you put underneath it make those just, like, erase everything that's not relevant and focus on the bullet points that are relevant, and that might require a little extra work to find those things, but
That's right.
that's part of
Yeah.
the process.
Yeah. And a little plug for JobScan because I've used it myself. That really helps as well, is to come up with other ways to articulate things.
Mm.
And there's something that's interesting that people who are over 40 are often in roles where the work that you do during the day is actually just trying to get people to agree on things.
Yeah.
So those, so someone might be interviewing you for like, oh, a product manager, have you ever done user studies and this and that? That might be part of it, but the outcomes that an employer generally wants is people who can get shit done.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that's awesome. I think that's really great advice. And then yeah, so really and I like the going to other people because like that helps you to get outside of your own mind
Yes.
and to see it from other people's perspective. Okay. Um this was an extremely helpful conversation and I am going to make a custom t-shirt that says go have some chocolate and try it again later. I think that is that's gonna be my new mantra. Like,
I love it.
it's not you don't have to do it right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Well, in a more serious note, Cindy, it really helps to get your mind off the thing that you're stuck. Like that's where that idea of go have some chocolate and try it again later
Yeah.
comes from.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Becky, thank you so much for being available and sharing your insights. Where can people find you? Like, what's the best way to connect with you and get more, just get more help from you?
Sure. A couple ways. One, my website is fireworkscoaching.com, www.fireworks with an S, coaching.com. I'm on LinkedIn under Becky Kaplan Ferrone. Yeah, those are probably the two best places to find me.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for being here. Thanks everyone for listening. I know I really enjoyed this, so thanks for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Cindy.